Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Alliterations. Today, I'm going to be talking to you uh, about some works of Stephen Crane. I am branching off a little bit. Mostly, I think, in the past, I've covered novels, some short stories, some prose fiction. But now I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about some poems that I've really enjoyed. Stephen Crane is one of those people. He's known for Red Courage, which is a pretty short novel. Mentioned I'll review that too. I'm sure. Overall, I think that's probably the biggest thing he's known for. But he does have a few other works. I'm looking at a couple of them over here right now. Things like Hey, Girl of the Streets, things like that. But he's not very well known for his poetry. And I'm not going to lie, on one hand, I see why. After reading some of his poetry, uh, but also I'm confused as to why, because he seems to be one of those people where what he does is either really good or it's really bad. And the poems are no exception. They're either really good, and I have bookmarked dog eared a handful that I think are very, very good, and then there are others that are. There's a reason why perhaps they were never published. Uh, and that's not a criticism, not a complaint, I should say. It is a criticism, not a complaint. I don't claim to be a good poet either. So, um, anyways, what the other thing that amazes me about Stephen Crane is that he was, well, 28 years old or 30 years old or something like that when he died, and he's written so much. And he had such a big impact on that era, especially the Red Badge of Courage. Uh, and that's really striking. And, as somebody who's, around that age, it makes me wonder what I'm doing with my life. And I think a lot of people feel the same way, or can feel the same way. Maybe if not specifically about Stephen Crane, then about trying to always continuing to try and do things. So I wanted to get into a couple of poems. First one I'm going to be discussing is the third poem from his, I believe, only published book of poetry, The Black Riders and Other Lines. So this one's a fun, short. It's, I think, very meaningful for today's world. In the desert, I saw a creature, naked, bestial, who, squatting upon the ground, held his heart in his hands and ate of it. I said, "Is it good, friend?" "It is bitter, bitter," he answered. "But I like it, because it is bitter, and because it is my heart." Uh, so, again, very short, no real rhyming pattern, which and no meter, identifiable meter in rhyming, which I tend to be a traditionalist in poetry. If it has to, at the very least, has to rhyme for me to really consider it poetry. If it, all the better if it has a rhythm to it. I am a pentameter or some such thing to it. But even though this doesn't rhyme or doesn't rhyme particularly well, there are a couple of slang rhymes like ground, hand, friend, all sort of and similarly, kind of. I like to say some slant rhymes. It's a really good poem because I think it talks about, I should say, I don't think it talks about, it does talk about the happiness people achieve or receive from being miserable. There are people, and I know a lot of people who choose to be miserable because it's what they know, and it's what how they feel happy, how they feel content. You know, and they've shed all the exterior parts of their life, family, friends, uh, work, hobbies, whatever it is, to just be miserable. And I think that's really telling here. I saw a creature, not human anymore. It's a husk of a person, of who once was. Uh, you know, I saw a creature in the desert. It's by itself, a harsh land, naked, bestial. It's reverted back to its just innermost thoughts of negativity. Who, squatting on the ground, held his heart in his hands, and he ate of it. Is it good, friend? The narrator asks. It is bitter, bitter, the creature answered, but I like it. Because it is bitter and because it is my heart. He's this creature, this husk of a human, has nothing left except the complaining, the bitterness, the agony, the loneliness. And I think that in today's world, that's a pretty, I think a lot of people could relate to that, even if they don't want to admit it. And I think we all probably know somebody like that. Anyways, there are a couple other ones that I really liked. Number 19 of Black Horse and Other Lines, or the Black Riders and Other Lines, sorry. A god in wrath was beating a man. He cuffed him loudly with thunderous blows that rang and rolled over the earth. All people came running. The man screamed and struggled. And a bit madly at the feet of the god, the people cried, "Ah, what a wicked man, and ah, what a redoubtable god." I think this one's pretty simple. It's about, you know, we have faith. Do we have faith in the right things? Uh, and do we just take the first thing that we see as being the truth, as being factual? And do we just stick to it? This the poem was talking about how the god was wrathful and striking a man. I'm not saying that, if the man, if nothing is said about the man except that he's being struck. Is he innocent? Is he guilty? We don't know. But we, as the audience, see the perspective of those worshippers of that wrathful God. We see their perspective on it. We understand their perspective that they are calling this man wicked, even though they know nothing about him. But they're calling their God unredoubtable, without fault. I think that's important to know. A few others I liked, particularly. I particularly liked his selection. I had to find it. Let's see. My apologies. Oh, War is Kind. And Intrigue is a long poem. I won't read to you the whole thing, but War is Kind, I thought was a good selection. And this one goes back to his days of being maybe a war correspondent, per se, but talking about military, writing about things like the Red Badge of Courage, Civil War novel, things like that. I thought was a very good poem. Um, there are a couple other parts that I really did like. Um, One of them is number 104. This one is included in the War is Kind uh, collection of poetry. Uh, so 104. This will be the last one I read to you. But because I think it's very powerful. It's very moving. And a little bit longer. Love, forgive me if I wish you grief. For in your grief you huddle to my breast, and for it I would pay the price of your grief. You walk among men, and all men do not surrender. In this I understand that love reaches his hand in mercy to me. He had your picture in his room, a scurvy trader picture, and he smiled, merely a fat complacence of men who know fine women, and thus I divided with him a part of my love. Fool, not to know what thy little shoe can make men weep. Some men weep, I weep and gnash, and I love the little shoe, the little shoe, little shoe. God give me medals, God give me loud honors, that I may strut before you, sweetheart, to be worthy of the love I bear you. Now let me crunch you with full weight of frighted love. I doubted you, I doubted you. In this short doubting, my love grew like a genie for my further undoing. Beware of my friends, be not in speech too civil, for in all courtesy my weak heart sees spectres, mists of desire rising from the lips of my chosen. Be not civil, the flower I give thee once, instant to a stride, a detail of a gesture, but search those pale petals and see engraven thereon a record of my intention. So that poem, in my reading and my understanding of it, uh, it's talking about is a man seeking to be needed by the woman he loves, quote unquote, but he loves her not for herself, but for the feeling he gives her. When he's with her, he can be chivalrous. He can take away her grief. He can, not share his love for her with other men. He needs to be in control. And it's one of those things where he's the one that's causing the grief. But then he's taking it away. It's a closed economic system right there. He's the one that is being claustrophobic in his love, and suffocating her. And I think that that's not a real love, but instead a selfish love. He feels for her. That's undoubtable. But he feels for her because of the way it makes himself feel, if that makes sense. And that's not a good reason to love someone, quote unquote. Or at the very least, it can be a reason, but it shouldn't be the reason. And it shouldn't be the only reason. In this poem, aptly describes that is the reason. And it's somebody who knows of relationships like that. They're not healthy and they're not good for anyone involved. And they're incredibly difficult to get out of. But they're a lot more common than you think. And part of this channel's mission is to apply literature, whether it's poems or whether it's prose fiction or whatever it is. Eventually we'll get to nonfiction. might have a surprise for you next month about that. You know, the point is that we have to apply these lessons that we learned in the readings, close readings, to our lives. How can literature better us, benefit us? And that's really important. And I really like Stephen Crane's poems, some of them. Again, not all of them are great, but they're worth reading. So I encourage you to pick up a copy of this book. I'm sure it's free, available online. The poems of Stephen Crane was one of the quickest and most enjoyable reads that I've had so far this year and during this YouTube venture of alliterations. Please like and subscribe, share this video if you can, and I look forward to seeing you next time.